are perhaps not receiving the mark, following Jesus, and opposing this beast, right? This blasphemous power. So let's first talk about keeping the commandments. So Revelation 14:12, this is Sunday's lesson for reference, says, this calls for patient endurance on the part of the people. Keep the commandments. Why do we need endurance? What is endurance? Why do we need endurance? That's the question on my mind right now. Let's talk about that. So in that context, we're being told we have to have patient endurance. Why? Well, Jesus warned us that we'd be hated by all, right? For his sake. We need to stand firm when this time is around. Why will we be hated? Another question. Because we obey God's commandments. The beast teaches altered or different commandments, right? Worship on Sunday is an example. What's the big deal if you're worshiping on Sunday instead of Saturday? That's what the beast would say. Worshiping the beast involves following its commandments, not the 10 Commandments. The saints are going to be persecuted. We're told we're going to be persecuted. We're going to be taken away from society if we keep worshiping Jesus, following God. So endurance is particularly important. What helps you, what helps us to have endurance? So think of it in the context of running. I want to have endurance in running. How do I get it? Over and over, over and over. So if I want to run a 10K, 6.2 miles, how do I start? Well, I start with a mile. Then I run 2. Then I run 3. Little by little, I build up. It's the little things. It's the steps each time. So perhaps one way to remain faithful, to have endurance, is to do what? Be successful in little things. Being faithful in little things. So the question then becomes, how faithful are you in the little things? And what does that then tell you about what will happen perhaps when the big things come? Any thoughts on how to build endurance in the spiritual sense? Susan? Mm. So, and that's right. And let me tell you, let me just share with you perhaps a week, unfortunately a typical week in my life, right? So, Sabbath, it's wonderful. It's a great day, very focused. Sunday comes around, I'm busy. The one prayer I make is at night when I put Elliot to bed, right? Monday comes around, boy, then work comes calling. People have 2 days to think about why they need to talk to you on Monday. The one prayer I offer, perhaps, is at night when I put Elliot to bed, right? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Perhaps in those 3 days, there's some reminder somewhere when I'm out driving or something I see, and I think, oh, boy, Lord's wonderful. Oh, I pray for that person. And then I'm on Saturday again. I don't think that's being faithful in the little things, or it's building that relationship. I think that's a risky week. I think in the end times, I'll be vulnerable if those are my weeks, right? And I'm not suggesting that I'm earning something or there's checklists but I don't think that week builds endurance. I don't know if you've ever had a week like that, but I don't think that week builds endurance. So I'd caution, trying to remind myself right now to not have a week like that next week. Yeah. Because we know this from the great controversy, from a lot of things that our particular denomination has light, but this cosmic struggle that's occurring, that we're in the middle of. Again, think about the background of this patience of the saints and endurance when we talk about keeping the faith in Jesus or of Jesus, both different but important. Because the Greek word, right, the expression about this patience of the saints can be translated both as faith in Jesus and faith of Jesus. Ray, any differences for you in those two things by chance? Right. Yeah. Right. Hmm. Sure. Yeah. Think about this concept. I agree with the character and the experience, perhaps in the context of children. So my kids, right? I assume they trust me, but why? Is it because I said, trust me, and then they did? Or is it because day after day after day they experience your character, and then they know, hey, I'm safe with dad. I'm safe with mama. They're not born, you know, they don't turn 3 and just do whatever we say and trust us and have this faith in us. It's because every day we build that with them. Sure seems the same. Very similar, very analogous if you think about it in your own life. So having faith in Jesus involves, I think, accepting his grace and forgiveness, being transformed by him. Hmm? And then perhaps, right, at the very end, it will all be fair, it will all be explained, all the evidence will line up exactly just so. Right? Good question. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so having the faith or keeping the faith of Jesus, Jesus' faith, keeping the faith of Jesus, perhaps means to live our life as he did. What was the faith of Jesus? And the cross isn't abstract, isn't some science fiction fact. It's actually personal to us, isn't it? You know, this cross, I think there's a way to academically think about it and think, well, because that occurred, this will occur, right? X equals Y. But we're taught that that was actually personal to all of us, to me, to you, and to each of us. And looking backwards as well, to everything in the past. When Jesus was here on earth, physically, he kept his focus on mission, yeah? He stood firm when facing doubts. But then on the cross, isn't there a time where he felt abandoned? Right. He had a moments before the cross, at the cross, where he felt abandoned. But he kept his faith, went back. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I read that book. I forget the name of the author, but he has, Lee Strobel, he had a few books. Mhm. So, yes, and with that in mind, this idea of a hook, the evidence. Mhm. Mhm. They experienced it, right? They were in it. Yeah. So perhaps this idea, this remembering, this hook, this evidence answers the question that was asked in the lesson. Think about a time when your life was in shambles, right? When it was crumbling around you. How'd you get by? What did you learn? Perhaps no one else's life has been in shambles, right? But how did you get by? What did you do? Yes, Deb? Yeah. Like you said, one foot in front of the other. The little things. Yeah, Damien. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I don't know. I think there's debate about how many promises of God are in the Bible, right? I don't know the number. Um, there is a website that I like. It's like the 120 promises of God, and he categorizes that website categorizes them. There's something very interesting about focusing on that, isn't there? Reading that, taking that to heart, the promises that were made, that are made for us. It's very powerful. I think that's a good reminder. Yeah, they never change. Not one jot or one tittle, right? Hmm. That's a fair point because sometimes when I think about prophecy, I'm focused forward, right? From here forward, and that's what this lesson is about, the end times. But we can't forget all the prophecy that preceded us and has come true. If some of you recall, I shared a story that was my hook into Christianity when I went to a Revelation seminar and they described the statue because I knew history. And I was like, hey, I know that happened. Oh, the Bible did too. I mean, honestly, that was the first kind of to get me over the wall. Yeah. Now look, that's academic. That was wonderful. Then it has to become personal. But that's a good point. This prophecy that has happened, we have evidence for thousands of years. So we're going to face some struggles, and we ought to not receive the mark of the beast. So let's talk about this when we look at Revelation 13. The dragon, Satan, is going to give its power to the beast. That sounds scary. And then guess what? The whole earth worships the dragon thanks to the beast, right? So Satan, power to the beast. But he worships the beast / Satan, right? Connected. A second beast, a false prophet, is going to apply the power of this beast and move everybody else to worship it. And then besides, in addition, it's going to make an image that's also worshipped. That's Revelation 13:14. The net result of that, this is the trick, this is the deception. Most everyone's going to believe that they're worshiping God by worshiping this image, this false prophet, or the beast. But actually, they're going to be worshiping Satan. I think that's important. I said that in a direction for a reason. Satan gives the beast power. The beast then does what it does. The whole earth is going to worship the beast. The beast is a false prophet. In the end, it's that cosmic battle about the Lord or Satan. We believe that the beast is going to force its mark on everybody to worship on Sunday. Then there'll be economic things that occur where you can't buy and sell. So I'm reading all this, and I was telling Sarah in the car yesterday, you're reading all this stuff, and you're like, oh. But what happens at the end of every time you read about it? Somewhere something says, God will protect his faithful children. Bad, 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 bad. Scary, scary, scary. Hard, 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 hard. God will protect his children. Nasty, gross, terrifying, terrifying. God will protect his children. God will take care of you. Every time you're kind of reading these things and it starts to get creepy. That's so in the Bible, right? Right? Good example. He protected them. Right. And by the way, protected them in a situation that doesn't add up. The facts as we know it would suggest that that's impossible. To put people in a furnace and have them not burn, or to put someone down in a hole with hungry lions and have them not be eaten, right? That doesn't happen. How can that? Well, it happened. Joe. Yeah. In that regard, that's the protection. And I'm not a Bible scholar, but what you were just saying, I think about what I believe about the stoning of Stephen. And Stephen didn't live. He wasn't given all the success on earth. But isn't there a part, aren't we told that at the very end, Stephen's countenance, how he looked, looking at the sky, it was opened to him. So in my mind, that's suggesting, he probably wasn't experiencing pain. It wasn't anguish, right? There was this protection. Even in that martyred moment, that moment of death, there was protection. I think there's evidence, science suggests that, when animals, like when you see a lion eat a zebra, I believe they've done this research, and there's evidence that the zebra releases some chemical, God's creation, so that it doesn't experience pain. Did you get, or something of that regard? Well, yeah, correct. Yes. Susan. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. In that, what you were just saying, I highlighted on Tuesday's lesson this paragraph where it says the devil is preparing Christians, professed Christians, by compromises in their daily life to receive the mark. Whew, that gave me goosebumps. It's the little things. And we talked about that before, I think it was a couple weeks ago, about these specific things that we know, and I could say, well, so what? You know, the Trinity, that's scientific, that's seminary nerd stuff. So what if I don't believe in the Trinity? I believe the other 20 some odd things. I think there's an actual heaven. So what if I don't believe the dead are asleep? I believe the other things. It's these compromises that are suggested to us that then open us up to the wrong choice. It's the details that matter. It's the little things that add up to the big thing. So why don't we follow the Lamb? That sounds like a good idea. Revelation 14:4, when talking about the people that chose the right path, said, "These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes." So those who remain faithful during this final conflict are, quote, those that follow the Lamb, end quote. So how do we do that? What does that mean? And then what's the other thing you would follow? The beast, the lamb, or a beast? So let's talk about who follows the beast and what's the beast. Let's go there. Sometimes people are uncomfortable with that, but let's just go there. So if we look at Revelation, talked about this a little bit, but Satan used who ultimately sentenced Jesus to death? Herod? The Roman Empire? Right? Who was in charge at the time? The Roman Empire. Satan used the Roman Empire to persecute Jesus. Right? Yes, Jew. In combination with the Roman Empire. Right? I agree. Yeah. Yeah, so it seems to me, perhaps, Eileen, that Satan, our great adversary, made a combination of his church and the Roman Empire, made a big old soup, and persecuted Jesus. That's right. That's right. The deception. That's what I'm getting to, right? You know, the throne of this beast is located in Rome. It's used its authority to prosecute the faithful people of God for a long time. There's no neutral zone here. There's no middle road. We talk about that all the time. We're either with the lamb or with the beast. Yeah. 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 Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. And I think that when we're talking about following the Lamb, and we're talking about these people, everybody else following the beast, the persecution, all this time and trouble, there's a quote from Desire of Ages that is in the lesson that I think is relevant, but I will tell you, personal to me, I read this a long time ago when I first jumped on board, and it was music to my ears in a logical, worldly sense. So let me read it and I'll explain it. It's not the fear of punishment or the hope of everlasting reward that leads disciples to follow Christ. They behold his matchless love, right? And the sight of him attracts and softens and soothes their soul. Love awakens the heart. They hear his voice and they follow him. I love that because I resisted with all my insides this idea of doing something for a carrot or doing something to not receive a punishment. Like, I don't care for that in the worldly sense. And I read that in a spiritual sense, and I thought, oh man, this is great. This is my kind of God. This is the Desire of Ages. I think it says page 480. And I have it in the readings too. And I paraphrase, by the way. I should have said that, her language. Yeah. Because that's different than being scared to believe in the Lord because you don't want to go to eternal punishing hell, the fire and brimstone, right? Or that's different from the lotto ticket heaven, like, oh, you're going to want to do it because it's everlasting life. That's the reason you should do it. It's everlasting life. It's going to be great, streets of gold. Right? But I think I'm paraphrasing the pulpit in many churches, perhaps including some of ours, Eileen. Oh, bring it back. When you have it, tell me again. But think about it in your own life. Think about it at your work. Think about it with your kids. Think about it when you were in school. Certainly, in a short-term way or in a temporary way, you can be motivated by fear. You can be motivated by reward. Don't get me wrong. But is that sustaining? Is that everlasting? Does it actually work? Do this or else? Yes. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Joe. Mm, right. It's not the streets of gold, the fruit on the tree necessarily. Hey, that's great. That's a part of the deal, but it's not why you do the deal. Yeah, yeah. Isn't that the truth? There's a reading from Ellen White, and I have not read this book. It's the That I May Know Him. I'd like to. I love this one. Got me really excited. Listen to this. Every moment of our life is intensely real. Life is no play. It's charged with awful importance, fraught with eternal responsibilities. When we look at our life with this point of view, we realize our need of divine help. Right? Life is no play. So I gave you an example of my week that wasn't ideal. What am I doing on that Monday? Life is play. I'm just living life. I'm doing what I got to do on Monday morning. I'm sending these emails, returning these calls. I'm thinking about what I'm going to make for dinner, and if we can watch the baseball game Monday night. That's play. I need to be reminded every moment is intensely real. This is no play. When we do that, the conviction that'll be forced upon us is that life without Jesus is utter failure. But if Jesus is with us, abides in us, we'll live for a purpose. There's a reason. There's a purpose. We then will realize that without the power of God's grace and Spirit, we can't reach this high standard that He placed before us. So said a different way, in very brief words, life is real. It's not a joke. And when you realize that from that point of view, then you're going to realize, wait, I need Christ. I can't do this by myself. Right? Life on the surface, life in the world on the surface, we can hack it on our own, usually. We can make the day okay. But if we think about it in the right context, we can't do that on our own. So then what happens? Well, we realize that life without Him, capital H, is a failure. It's got no purpose. What's the purpose? What's the average life expectancy? I don't know, let's say 72 years, 76 years. Is the purpose to spend 72 or 76 years being okay every day, accumulating some things, having a couple exciting moments, and calling it quits? That sounds terrible. That sounds just terrible. Oh, but there's life with a purpose. That's energizing. How do you feel? Look, think about it this way. Think about one of the aspects of our creation. Sarah and I talked about this yesterday. I might buy something really new and fancy and feel pretty good about it. I'll like it for a little while. But what's the difference? How do I feel? How do we feel as a family? How do my kids feel when we help somebody that's really in need? What does that feel like? Oh my goodness, that is like life-boosting, sustaining. You feel it from your toes to the top of your head. We were talking about the fact that we were created that way. That's not something we earned on our own or a perspective that I have. All of us were created that way. When you help somebody else, the feeling you get far exceeds the feeling you get in other aspects of things that are fun or good. How fascinating that that's one of the basis, the underpinnings of the way we were made. Boy, that fits in the whole context in the story, doesn't it? About loving your neighbor. What was Jesus like when He was here? What's God's character? Is God's character to help people? Right? All this is intertwined. Let's touch on this idea of opposing this beast or this blasphemous power. So Jesus, when He was here, when He was persecuted by His church and by the Romans, he was accused of blasphemy. Do you remember that from the Bible? Jesus was accused of blasphemy in two ways. They accused him of blasphemy, saying he was forgiving sins. And they accused him of blasphemy, saying that he was making himself God. You remember that? That's in there. You can look at Luke 5:21, John 10:33, but in the story of the Lord and his persecution on the cross, he was accused of blasphemy by his church and the Roman Empire for doing two things: forgiving sins and making himself God. He wasn't, though, because he was God. So he was, so he wasn't blasphemous. What is the beast doing now, and what will the beast be doing later? I suggest to you, our lesson suggested to us, that the beast is being blasphemous. The beast is forgiving sins. The beast is making himself God. This is real. This is not meant to be prejudicial to anybody. But as an example, the Roman Church, the Catholic Church, teaches that priests can do what? Forgive sins. Oh, and what else? What's the Pope? God on earth. Right, Ray? The Pope takes the place of the Lord on this earth. That sounds to me like the two types of blasphemy that Jesus was accused of on the cross: forgiving sins and making himself God. There are so many little details in there that I've glossed over with those two big points. And the details matter. But this was shared with us. This prophecy was given to us for a reason. Don't be deceived in the end. I don't want to be deceived in the end. Things like this were given to us for a reason, for us to keep in mind. We'll end with this thought. This is from my life today. There are two great principles, one of loyalty, the other of disloyalty. We all need greater Christian courage so that we can uplift the standard which is inscribed in the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. The line between the obedient and disobedient must be plain and distinct, not blurry, not confusing. It's plain and distinct. We must have a firm determination to do the Lord's will at all times and in all places. These economic temptations, worshiping on a different day, what's the big deal? Well, there's a bright line, and we have to have the determination to stay on the right side of that line. By the way, when I'm saying this, do I mean our own willpower and strength? We would fail. We will fail. Having the Lord's strength. Through that, these are the things we can do through that. Please. Mm. Oh. Mm. Mm. Yeah. Because on the surface, it doesn't sound offensive. Sounds loving, thoughtful. He's a nice gentleman. I observe the Sabbath, but I do this because it's Redemption Day. Boy, tricky. Yes, ma'am. Because again, on the surface, hey, that sounds kind of reasonable, right? You have all the facts, and then just go ahead and choose your day, though. Apply all the facts, but then pick your day. Yeah. Hey, what's the big deal about that, right? Right. That's the big deal. Right. They twist the head. Right. Right. Because the fourth commandment doesn't say pick your day. Right. It doesn't say, hey, here's the whole Sabbath situation, and feel free to do that on Sunday, though. Right. Right. Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you for being here for Sabbath school. I was Reuben today, by the way. Reuben had to switch, so I showed up, and he'll be here on the fourth Sabbath. Let's end with prayer. Bow your heads. Lord, thank you. That sounds so small, those two words, but I mean them in the maximum way that we can mean them. For being here, being in our minds and in our hearts. Don't leave those places today of all days on the Sabbath, but every day this coming week. Help us with the little things. Through you, we can do that, be successful in those little things and the big things too. Be with us here when we worship you in about 10 minutes. Stay in this place and fill it. Amen.